It's a pity that Andrew's not here to actually to talk about this. But, it's really a wonderful, wonderful revelation, this whole thing. And the whole point is that he said to us, within this frame of reference, that maybe Jesus Christ, this individual, by doing this business, this wonderful, what they call the resurrection, tried to prove to humanity, hang on a minute, fellas, if I can do this, so can you, because you are also naturally living like I am. Here I am, trying to show you there's a way to do this. And in that piece of cloth is distance-coded information, the only image in the world that has, in the most incredible way, in its flat two-dimensional surface, a scorch of some blazing type of light that just scorched the surface fibers of this cloth, and in it installed three-dimensional information somehow that machines now at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena in Texas are able to solicit and show, that this thing can come away from the cloth and you can actually see the image of a man that had a crown of thorns on his head and whip marks, a biologically perfect specimen that no pathologist or forensic doctor can fault in its detail. And the most amazing thing, of course, that might sign it as in fact the actual body cloth that covered Jesus, was the fact that it had a crown of thorns. And the only person that in history a crown of thorns was reserved for in the death scenario, so to speak, was Jesus Christ. Because if you remember, the Jews, at least the Romans, mocked him with the statement, Jesus Christ, King of the Jews. And it was only to Jesus that a crown of thorns was put on. So it can't be anyone else's body relic. It had to be this one specific person. And I tell you what, I am, after so many years of looking at this business, from being totally skeptical, because the church is full of relics and all that through history.
Yeah, living ones.
This one, I tell you, is a genuine article, no question. I'd lay my soul on the line on this. And
well, how do you see that as a tool for us to learn from and to create a body of light?
Well, he said
to
us, Lon, didn't he? He said to us, "Don't ye know ye are gods?" His words. And he was actually trying, I believe, this wondrous being, to tell us all that we have this incredible capacity and that we've got to guard it because we're living beings that can think and make decisions. And he came here to make sure that maybe we believed in ourselves enough to know that if we thought in a certain way, and he showed us how to do this by his own example, we might in fact be able to escape the grip of a dying mechanism, a universe that has a second law breaking everything up to, in the future, cosmologists now say that the universe is going to be ended. It would be a flat nothingness, cold nothingness, with all atoms unraveled, even subatomic particles taken out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, if it's going to be that finite, if it's going to end like that, why do we have meaning? Why am I talking to you like this? Why do we have meaning right in the middle, so to speak, of all of this? I think Jesus was trying to say, if we live for a state of being beyond death and not a state of being in life, we might find the antidote for anything the grays bring to bear on us. I believe the Shroud of Turin, I'll say this, I'm sorry, I don't wish to sound too much like a preacher, but I really do believe that the Shroud of Turin is the most powerful illustration paradigm to kind of demonstrate the power over atoms of someone who lives for existence beyond the atomic state. And I think that's why this business of being good and all this is required by all the great teachers, not just Jesus. There's Gautama Buddha, there's even, and believe me, don't believe that the great prophet of Islam was a devil. He wasn't at all. It's the people who came after him that mangled his words and do these terrible things to everybody that actually let the side down, as in fact I believe the church did let Jesus down and so on. It's the people who come after that alter their words and so on that actually lay these terrible things on their laps, so to speak. But the great teachers themselves, if you really go and get the pure word that they made, they never said many of the things that, you get said about them today. And so here was this wondrous being mangling his body for us on a cross. The last thing he could say, with all that pain and all that injustice powered on him in this piece of wood they call a cross, was, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I tell you what, mate, sometimes when something drops on my toe and I jump up and scream and shout, I try and think of this man with all that terrible stuff heaped on him being able to say this. Now, if you can do that, you're very special. And maybe there is something to us adding things together. I think that's what he means by being good, so to speak. Bring things together, unite things, don't break them apart. And the momentum of using our thoughts in this kind of fashion opens up a wonderful future beyond life. Of that I am certain. There really is. That we continue. This thing I call the soul is an information field, not of this universe. And you cannot destroy it. It really can be used, it can be borrowed, it can be fixed into something else. But you can't destroy that itself. Rather like oil and water don't mix, the field of the soul, I call it an electrospatial field, a morphogenic electrospatial field, doesn't actually fit with the physicality of our physical universe. It stays and it goes on and on and on. And if we can actually contrive it in a certain way, it goes into another state of being that's wondrous, where all things come together. I call that state the God-verse, if you see what I'm trying to say, for want of a better word. I don't really want to ally that in an anthropomorphic religious sense,
right.
But if you see what I'm trying to say, I just call it a God-verse, be as secular as I possibly can about this. Maybe call it an all-verse. I mean, that might be even better, if you see what I'm trying to say. People have problems with this God business,
Yeah.
That's the whole point about it. Sorry to go at this tirade pace, but we've got an hour, and I've got to hitch in 3 books worth of and I do apologize to you, Lance, and I don't mean to kind of hog the whole thing, if you like, but it really needs saying to introduce the elements. You can ask me for now, little questions on how these things actually connect up together in detail, if you like. And John is there to answer you the scientific, biochemical verity of it all, too, if you so want to do. But I just wanted to connect up the soul with the grays and the cloth. And I hope I've done that, however awkwardly, in the last few minutes.
Well, yes. And you mentioned, too, that the hybridization program has been stepped up dramatically. And from your research of the data on the abductions, since they first started being noticed, have they increased over the last decade, or have they decreased?
Well, they've increased, it seems, Lance. It seems that, according to the 2 authorities I trust the most, Professor Jacobs and Bud Hopkins, and they really are wonderful people. They've done the best research, to my mind, on this question, and according to them, this is increasing at a pace now. There seems, particularly Professor Jacobs seems to say, that this particular thing is increasing at such a pace that something is up. And I can't verify this, of course, and it's just a speculation, and I have to say this. As much of what I try to say is, but you can't make empirical evidence if something is against you in this world, as most people seem to be that control the mainstream, because they don't want the repercussions of anything like the Greys kind of, taken seriously for all mankind for various reasons, fiscal reasons, whatever. But something there is here is wrong in the state of Denmark that, so to speak, is hiding this from all of us. And I do really believe that if this is escalating and they are, increasing their efforts to synthesize humankind and our DNA, to alter it so that in some kind of way they can meld their programmed, artificial, mechanistic form of being into ours, then every individual who they can do this to will be interrupted in his natural scale of development. And that scale might preclude that particular individual of an eternity. And that's the terrible thing. That's the big deal. And maybe 2012 doesn't signal the end of the world. It signals the end of natural free thinking. And that, to me, is bigger than the end of the world.
Yes, it would be. It would be. What part do you think the power of the heart plays in our uniqueness? And some say that the heart has a mind of its own that is actually a very small chamber that is actually like our minds. Isn't that a significant difference over a mechanized being to have a heart and to be able to feel and have emotions?
Well, our brain is a colloidal jelly, if you see what I'm trying to say, right?
Yes.
And within the frame of reference of this colloidal jelly, realization occurs, understanding occurs, motive occurs, action is propagated and promulgated, if you see what I'm trying to say. So however the biological presentation, however that may be constructed and construed, whatever our human aegis might be in its physical biochemical mechanism, and can I tell you that John Biggerstaff is much better qualified to talk about this than I am. I have to try to be a juggler looking at all the various disciplines possible to put the story together, but then I rely on some really well-trodden paths through some clever minds who've done specific things in specific directions, and John is a very good direction to go to when you talk about biochemistry and so on. And maybe you can ask him about this heart question. He might have a better take than I have on it.
Well, yes. John, what do you think about that? And, your expertise is in molecular and cell biology and microbiology. It seems as if a lot of the diseases that are manufactured today are designed in a laboratory. Such as AIDS and many other diseases seem to be occurring unnaturally. Is that possible?
Right. Coming to the diseases, but it may well be that these diseases are being used as genetic vectors to actually get some of these alien encoded signals into us to make us even want the technology even more. But to go to your principle of heart and caring, really, I think what's happening here is that our ability to think is really not part of the physical universe in a way. It's enmeshed within it. And in the living process, it sort of it has mechanisms both in biochemistry and etc. by which it is able to interface with a physical system in the process that we call life. But I think one of the most important things about the concept of heart is really, to reiterate what Jesus and what now Nigel is sort of saying about Jesus really is that, at the beginning of the universe, there was effectively nothing, then there was a big bang and everything came from that. Well, now we know from physics, for instance, that the ability to observe a process happening actually changes that process. In fact, this was done in the 1930s and 40s by physicists, which actually gave us a really big handle on what this concept of consciousness really is. And so really that places any consciousness between these two master boundaries of chaos at one end, which entropy is leading us towards, and really this 0 point where everything all comes together as one, which is essentially what we were all in the first place. And I think that the concept of caring, really, and love and all of those emotional positive qualities that